Everybody ready? Okay. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I'd like to welcome Council and our law solicitor and economic development consultant, and Angela Rivet, who's here in the office, to our committee of the whole meeting, along with our residents and anybody else watching. Welcome to the Village of Walton Hills Committee of the whole meeting of Tuesday, June 29th, 2021 at 7 p.m. This meeting is being live streamed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We are following House Bill 404 that allows public bodies to meet electronically through July 2021. This is, we already had our regular 2 COW meetings. This was another COW meeting called in front of our special council meeting that will follow this meeting. We won't take a break. We'll just go right into our special council meeting. Next item is roll call. Mary Brenner Miller.
Here.
Brian Spitznagel.
Here.
Denny Linville.
Present.
Jennifer Allen.
Here.
Gloria Terlowski.
Here.
Raymond Whedon.
Here.
All of council present, along with our law director, John Montello, and our economic development consultant, Tom Jordan. Okay. Sarah, I'm going to rely on you a little bit to any comments related to the agenda items from any residents. Is there anything on there, Sarah? No. How many people do we have watching? 10 right now? Okay. Thank you. Okay. At this time, we'd like to discuss, we have legislation tonight for ordinance 2021-14. That's the Smith & Obey Community Reinvestment Agreement. And we have an attachments. I thought we would go through it with Mr. Jordan here. If we have any questions, or if anybody else has any questions. I know we've been talking about this for a long time, for them purchasing this piece of property for their expansion. Mr. Jordan, did you want to just kind of give a briefing on it, and we'll kind of go through it and answer questions?
Before council this evening, there are 2 ordinances. The first ordinance authorizes a CRA agreement. CRA agreement is a Community Reinvestment Act, which allows the village to offer property tax abatement to commercial entities that are located within the city. The last time, some of you may recall, we did it was for for the construction equipment company.
NPK.
NPK.
Tom, do you want to maybe bring the mic up a little bit, or you can extend the, I'm sorry, you're a lot taller than a lot of people. I just want to make sure we hear all this.
Was NPK. The idea of the CRA is that on the improved value of the building, Smith & Obey, as outlined in the agreement, is planning a 6,000 square foot addition to their structure on, which is the second subject of the second ordinance, on currently city-owned land. That is at the corner of Northfield and Alexander Road. And at Northfield and Alexander. The 6,000 square foot addition, in addition, they agreed to create 5 new jobs at a minimum. It is a conservative number that they could live with. I will start by just explaining the CRA. The CRA is a statewide program that if you elect in, which the village did, where you could hold back people's property tax assessment up to 100%. So you could theoretically say that you could give away all of the improved value. So there's a current value, let's just say there's $100,000 worth of value. With the addition of the $100,000, you're abating that $100,000 worth of value on the building. So what the ordinance does is actually, in this instance, abate only about 49% of that increased value. You can never, the village and the school district and all the other tax entities are going to get all of what they currently receive today. What the CRA agreement says, on the real estate taxes, on the improved value of the building. And the reason why they use a percentage is that that value will be at a later time determined. It's going to be based, in your agreement, they agree, actually the whole project is costing $1.1 million. So the actual improvements are estimated on the physical nature of the addition about $900,000 from their application. So on that $900,000, or roughly $1 million of that value, under your commercial tax rates, 50% of it would be abated. I will tell you in general, the portion of property taxes that actually flows back to the village, I believe, is down around 6%. So actually, the village is not really, when you abate real estate taxes, the person that is affected the most is typically the school district, which leads us to a notice that's been provided under the agreement under the state of Ohio. If you offer a property tax abatement, you have to notify the school district. They were done so 2 weeks ago. They acknowledged the receipt of the notice. However, we received no further comment from them. If you abate over 50%, you're required to enter into negotiations with them and come up with a tax sharing program. But since the village, in this case, is doing less than 50%, the notice was sufficient. They've made no further comment, and council is in a position to authorize it this evening now that the 2 weeks have elapsed.
Tom, we just, not to interrupt, but we did receive, you have in front of you. what we did
The
receive.
mayor, it's a hi, Mayor. I hope to
Everybody
see,
has that.
finds you well. I wanted to know that we reviewed your CRA and have no questions. Good luck and thanks for sharing. So they're aware of it.
That's, you have that, right.
And with council's authority, if you're over 50%, there would have to be a separate motion on behalf of the school district. But again, since it's less than 50%, we don't need to have that happen. So we're abating about half of the improved value of the building for the 6,000 square foot addition. I will note, actually, Councilwoman Allen did a good proofing job and noticed the exhibit that actually attaches to the ordinance in section 1 of that agreement. It actually lists what the estimated project value. At one time, it was $700,000, but that was pre-COVID, and the cost of a material has gone up. And their last and consistent with their most recent application, they indicate that the cost of doing that addition is now ballooned to $900,000. So that number is incorrect in section 1 and will be corrected in the final agreement that goes out.
Let's stop there for a minute. So do we need, John, should we make a motion for an amendment to that? Or is that considered I mean, what do you think? I probably.
Just describing there's error, and it's just an estimated amount, so I would, just as long as the one you're approving in the ordinance is correct, and the next piece of legislation is correct, then I see no reason to do it, but.
It will be corrected in the final agreement that is executed, in the executed document, and we're amenitizing it this evening, so it's been disclosed.
I mean, we can make all these.
And also, we did provide,
Doesn't hurt any. Why don't we, how does council feel? Probably making a motion is not a bad thing.
No, it's never
At least
bad.
it's noted.
Yeah.
Okay. So what would the motion, as we go through this, just, let's get that.
so the the CRA agreement. Does anybody have any other specific questions relative to the CRA agreement, the tax abatement agreement?
Tom, I do. You said that this doesn't affect the village taxes that they would be getting, exactly, right?
It does.
It does, but it's a small
But
amount.
the majority of property taxes flow to the
The
school
schools
district.
instead.
School district and the vocational school.
So from what I was reading, though, when I went through everything, the village will be getting a yearly fee
Oh, yeah. Yes,
for the
there is a-
15 years?
There is a fee that is charged. There's a $750 application fee that they pay, and then there's an annual $500 fee. That covers the cost of monitoring it. So, every year there is a thing called a tax increment review committee, and I could tell you in no way does that $500 compensate this village for the amount of time, staff time that it takes to do it. What happens is, you currently have one at NPK, you used to have one at our house. Our house has expired, obviously. NPK is still ongoing. Every year they have a meeting, and the city has to fill out a form, as does the business that receives the abatement. And they say, how are you doing with your job creation numbers? And how are you receiving the real estate tax abatement? And that form is filled out, a meeting is held, a vote is taken, and at that vote, they say, are they compliant with the agreement? So it's not like, we don't want to be giving out incentives and people not fulfilling their obligation. The first one they have to do is build that building. Second one is that they got to create those jobs. And every year it's reviewed, and that $500 offsets the review. So that fee has been subject of some recent legislation at the state. They're talking about either removing it entirely, so it may be removed at some point. That fee is set by the state of Ohio.
Okay.
We're giving out an incentive. The fee was meant 20 years ago to sort of cover the cost, but it's, in my estimation, a bit of a nominal fee, and that, seems counterproductive.
Well, it said in there too, though, that it could go up to 2,500.
It does, or 1% of the
1%?
cost, but this project is so minimal, it'll always be the $500 fee.
Okay.
It was meant to escalate if the project was, tens of millions of dollars, and the review gets more complicated.
Okay.
But in this instance, there's no chance of that thing ever.
Right.
Mayor,
Yes.
the only other question I had is what we started to talk about before was that wording.
Just so you know, the CRA agreement is a statewide program. The forms are uniform for every community, and that language is in every agreement. The only thing that date is that they're trying to do two things. Is sometimes people pass these, and actually, there's a good example at Oakwood that you might be familiar with, they pass the agreement and they never build the building. And they keep saying, I'm going to build it next year. I'm going to build it the following year. So with this thing, it has a sunset. And if they don't build it by 2022, then they won't be offered the abatement. And that also that there is a provision in there that it gets cut off after 15 years,
Right.
they're out. And they're just trying to provide that there is typically a lag. The way property taxes work is that next year you will pay this year's.
Correct.
And so let's just say we pass this ordinance. I have to file it within 15 days of its passage with the state of Ohio. I give a copy to the county. Well, what's the chances of the state and Cuyahoga County opening their mail and start working on getting that tax abatement implemented within
All right.
a very short time? So it gets on someone's desk for many months. And I then, when it comes to the review, it's very frequently on the first year, the company says, I never received the abatement. One might be that you can't, the difference in the time lag of the way you pay taxes, that's typical. And the other one is that they haven't finished processing the abatement. Well, then they're gonna say, well, I didn't get my full 15 years. We will start it a year late, but there's a provision in there that sunsets it after a certain number of years, so everyone knows upfront that you can't keep it going forever. So,
Okay, so that's section 6, real property.
yeah,
tax
and that
exemption.
language is
That's what-
standard. It's not something dreamed up by one of our current attorneys. It's the standard state
Okay.
thing, and they just applied what was in there. I just hope that Smith Obie, you know, we have been working with them for a number of years. I know a number of the council people that have been here have heard about this deal for, as I have, a number of years. That they do get it up and get this constructed this year, as indicated in the agreement.
Tom, I have a question. So with the November 1st, as a document says, the November 1st, 2021, start of construction. So has Smith and Obie already submitted
They have not
what
submitted.
this building looks like?
They gave me, and I'm not sure that it's in here, there is not a very good site plan for it at this point, or renderings of the exterior. And I will tell you that typically, they would be further along. I did ask the president, you know, they're in the construction business, so I assume that they will move pretty quickly after these agreements are entered into. But I don't have detailed site plans. The mayor has had conversations centered around, we want the building to look, because of its prominence at Alexandria and Northfield, to look attractive from the front. If you actually look at their existing buildings, there's sort of an addition that looks more industrial and a front that looks more like an office building. In my conversations with them, it will look more like an office building, and tie the two buildings in. The setbacks, et cetera, will be submitted, and the detailed site plans will be required to go through the village's planning commission, and at that time, they will deal with the more specific nature of the aesthetics, as well as its placement on the property. But it's my understanding it will be up towards the corner and adjacent to the existing office building, as opposed to the rear of the parcel. I'm sorry I can't describe it in more detail than that. Any other questions on the CRA agreement? And I'll go over the second piece of,
Yeah, we can come back to it, if anybody, you know, that's,
And after looking, I kind of got caught off guard. I think we should make an amendment, make a motion to amend that.
okay, if you want to write something up, John, for that, or, and then we can, in between meetings, get that.
Sure, I was kind of caught off guard.
Okay. What, Tom, did you want to go into we'll go into item B, we can always come back. Any questions from any residents or people watching?
Just a comment from Debbie Kozak saying good evening, Mayor and Council.
What was that?
Debbie Kozak was just saying good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening. Thank you.
the second ordinance is the sale of land to Smith and Obie. The city acquired a half-acre parcel at the corner of Northfield and Alexander some years ago now. It was placed in the city's land bank as per the, it was done through a foreclosure. And tax foreclosed properties are offered to cities and villages, and they can be placed in what is called a land bank. A land bank is meant that it's placed there with the understanding that it should be resold and used for a private purpose. If the city's intent was for that land to be used for a municipal purpose, it did not go into the land bank. It would first be placed in the land bank. The city would tell the county that it had a municipal purpose and that it would then be removed from the land bank and put in the Village of Walton Hills is named by itself. But really, it's in the Village of Walton Hills Land Reutilization Bank. When it's done that way in part that the idea of the land bank is that tax foreclosed properties would then be recycled and then used in furthering economic development and used for a private purpose. Under the state statute that created it, there were certain procedures that you had to do. One of them was that the sale of the land could only be done what they established as fair market value through an appraisal process, which was done. An appraisal was done on the property, a set price was made. We offered it to Smith Obie. They did not want to pay all the money for a variety of reasons, but we told them that basically this is the state policy and we offer it. They agreed to that price. The added stipulation in the sale agreement is consistent with the intent of the land bank, is that there's a reversionary clause, that if they don't construct the building within 2 years, the village will get the land back. So let's say we all pass the CRA agreement, we pass the land sale. The land sale is going to happen. And they close on the land, but they never construct the building. So in the event that they don't do that, we don't want people to hold on to the land in a speculative fashion and then sell it for $150,000 5 years from now. We're doing this in an economic development fashion to try to retain and create jobs. So unless they do that, the land would revert back to the village, and there's a provision in the land sale agreement for that to happen. So that's the only special thing about it. You may ask, I explained how the price was arrived at. You may ask where that $117,500 may go to. It's required under the land bank. You can recover the costs of the transaction, the lawyers that drafted the agreements, etc. But you have to, you can recover the costs, and then you have to go back, inform the county, and they will let you know the tax entities that had lost money under the tax foreclosure, and they would be repaid according to the rules that are set up with the land reutilization bank. So I'm sorry, but we can't put it into an unrestricted fund within the general fund. It has to go back to really land bank purposes. I would remind council that there is another land bank parcel that we're still trying to clean up environmentally. And if there is, by some miracle, that after we recover the costs of the transaction, after the tax entities that were out, and if there is any money left back, it would then ideally be used for other land bank issues. The village, I also would remind, has been mowing the lawn, it's been maintaining the property, so all of those costs are eligible for reimbursement. In the end, that would be a plus side on the village's accounting. We are recovering money that has already been spent, but it's not unrestricted.
And that comes first, correct, Tom?
It's my general understanding, yes, that it does come first. We'll, again, consult the rules and regulations, but it's my understanding it comes first. Because they were trying to get you to sell the land, and one way is to try to help you cover your costs, and then you get payback that people that lost on the tax. But we'll follow the state required procedure on it.
Tom, is there a standard time frame that those lost taxes have? I mean, does that sit there and they can come back 10 years later and say, hey, I didn't get...
That's a very good question. Again, I believe it's up to the county, and they will really tell us how and who to repay and how much.
Okay.
So I really don't get into it that far with them.
Sure.
I will tell you there had been occasions when I've notified the county that a land bank sale has occurred and given the parcel number, and that they either have never replied or indicated that there was no refund due. But it was always a mystery to me personally how they arrived at both of those conclusions.
Okay,
Because obviously a foreclosure occurred.
right.
But they freed up the city that got it from doing it. And as you know, there are land banks, like in the city of Cleveland, where the land in some aspects would say have a low value, and they transfer them for $1. So do you split up the $1? No, it doesn't split up the $1.
Right.
So, obviously there are land banks where that occurs. Those are typically small residential parcels that, there was an abandoned house on it. A lot of times you may hear on land banks where they recover the cost of the demo of the house.
Okay.
That's a typical. Does anybody have any other questions on the land sale? That being said, we're looking tonight for an approval on ordinance number 2021-14, Smith-Obey CRA agreement. I think the law director is indicating that an amendment to section 1 in that paragraph change that amount from $700,000 to $900,000, and that's the only amendment we have. The CRA agreement, is actually an exhibit to the ordinances.
Just for the record, I think, as Todd mentioned, we've been discussing it, and some of this discussion, quite a bit of it has taken place in executive session, which we know can take, place in executive session. The sale of land is something that is allowed. But I know, as we mentioned before, Tom, and I think an important thing to talk about is, because I know the village, we've owned that land for a long time. I've been in the village 26 years. When I moved here, there was no gas station there. And it was an eyesore for a long time. And it took us a long time to, we chased that owner for a long time, trying to get that person to make a decision. We finally did acquire the property through foreclosure. We were able to clean it up, plant grass, and make it at least a green space. And we looked at that. I know when I first became mayor, me and Tom looked at it, for that project, but what can really be done with it? It's it's about a half acre, maybe a little less. And there isn't many things that can be done with it. It is on the corner, it's our gateway. And Smith and Obey, when they said they were interested in expanding and being a very good business in Cuyahoga County and a good business to the village, it was definitely a perfect fit. They're they're a very good business in the village, and they're right there, and it just was the right thing. And I know before this body here that's in front of us, as we talked to them about selling them the property, were we concerned about whether we ever want to put up a sign to our gateway or some kind of aesthetics. So we did, and split that little parcel there, and we do have an easement, a piece of property that we own, so we can do that in planning for this. So this has been in the works for a while. This council here, you approved that way in case we decide to put a gateway sign in or some fencing to match the other side to make that corner attractive. We can do that. We have that right to do that, and Smith and Obey understands that we want that corner to be attractive, and so they agree to that, and we split that. Well, we split it before we sold it, so we didn't need their thing, but the amount of land we took isn't hindering their project either. So I think that's important to let the residents know. We've been thinking about this, we've been planning for it, you know, and done our due diligence in that. No different than we'll do the same thing with the other corner, hopefully when that gets redeveloped. So just want to mention that because that's something we've done here as a body, is make sure we can match the gateway or put a sign there if we so choose to. I don't know, Tom, if you want to just I just kind of wanted to mention how we got here where we are today. It's been kind of a long process.
Yeah, one of the exhibits, while you may consider it a minor one, is the legal description. That the size of the parcel slightly changed because we retained a portion of it for a gateway sign in the future. And also, you know, when you look at the parcel, you got to remember there are setbacks from both streets, so it does limit anything that could be built there. So the lot split occurred, and the city actually, it added more land to the right-of-way portion. The right-of-way actually is, you know, 10, 20 feet off the edge of the curb, and in one section it goes back like 30 feet, as an example, in order to put a gateway sign up there in the future. So we'll see. And first we'll let them obviously construct their building, and then at some later point look at that gateway issue.
But we don't have to go back to anybody, we have the right to do it. So it's something that we planned here, and it's a good thing. I'm excited to see that corner get developed there, and also maintains Smith and Obie. They want to expand, and they, you know, 5 jobs, you know, it's 5 more jobs that we don't have.
And it's a minimum number.
Minimum number.
We want them to, I never tell, some people say, oh, well, we'll get more if I give you a really high number. And I go, that's not a good idea. You should give me the minimum number, especially look at what happened this year. And, you know, the recession wasn't that long ago. And I have had to amend or rescind CRA agreements for companies that don't live up to their number, as, you know, and a lot of times in my experience has been some extraordinary circumstances. You know, this year, just so you know, there was a blanket approval for all CRA agreements statewide. First time, you know, that ever happened. There are a lot of companies that didn't meet their numbers because, you know, hiring was frozen, or, you know, downturn in the economy. They didn't keep people at work. So, you know, they gave them a blanket approval. But we hope they actually do better. As you can see, they also have a very healthy payroll for the village. So the 5 jobs, in addition to retaining them, they are landlocked. This is their only way to expand. You know, so, you know, the only other option I think I discussed with prior councils is that maybe other more likely scenarios, it might be a small retail store or something that would not generate anything an industrial user would. So these are full-time employees. Retail typically uses part-time labor and hourly. So, you know, as far as a use, as far as a return to the city, you know, I don't think I think it's its highest and best use for that property.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
And Tom, the, say 5 jobs, that it's a minimum of 5 jobs, but just so our residents understand too, because we have all the numbers, they are very well-paying jobs.
Yes.
They're not minimum wage, 5-employee jobs in any way, shape, or form, so.
They agree that the new payroll, added payroll, would be about $300,000. So the village receives 2.5 of that. So. So,
And that's minimum. We're hoping more go in there.
we do.
And we feel good about that.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I can say from personal experience, it's an outstanding company, very well managed. They're top of their line in what they do in this area and industry, so it's a very good thing for the village.
Any other questions on item ordinance A, and the ordinance doesn't say item A and item B there? We can come back to them as we go through the meeting if anybody, something comes to them or makes, needs to add something. Ray, did you want to mention something?
Yeah, Mayor Colgraf, I did have one more question for Tom. Just want to, if you could reiterate the piece about recovering costs that the village may have spent on maintaining that property. Is there any statute of limitation going back to, say, the initial purchase? What the mayor mentioned about the cleanup, the former gas station.
Yeah, this to my understanding, because we had to look into this, and I was here just at the time the village received this. I think I might have drafted the response to the county when they offered it for sale. Before we took it, we asked the state for its environmental record, and on the property, which is noted in the agreement if you read through it, there is an existing no further action letter, and that is a term that's used and that we hope to get achieved on our other land bank parcel, where the EPA says they don't require you to take any further environmental remediation of the property. And that was done outside the city's ownership and outside of the city's expense.
Okay.
So we got it that way.
Okay.
We hadn't confirmed it. The county told us we could take the land, but I contacted the state's office, it's Buster, Bureau of Underground Storage Tanks, and they actually had the letter, and they supplied it to me, and then we kept it in the file, and we furnished a copy to Smith Obie. That does not mean the entire property is clean, and we've disclosed the condition of the property to Smith and Obie, but they may do further testing on their own. But we didn't do that.
Okay. And that answers my question.
I think really the bulk of what we're doing is the people dump or they have grass clean up, and then you'd be surprised how expensive attorneys are. So our outside attorney may have the cost on the sale transaction. We recovered that. The cost of the appraisal. So those are all reimbursable expenses.
Rick Lornecker did the purchase agreement paperwork and this legislation that's in front of us. And then John reviewed it with them. Correct?
Yes,
John?
sir.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Anybody have anything else related to that? I would ask if we could pass both of those for suspension tonight. I don't know who, anybody.
I'll be happy to give one, do one. Yeah, I'll do the first one, nobody minds.
I'll do the second one.
Okay.
And Mr. Montello will give me the wording for the amendment.
Yes, sir.
Unless Jennifer, did you want to,
Unless Jennifer brought up the
Yeah.
amendment, so why don't
I
you do it?
can second it with Brian and do the
It's up
amendment
to you.
then, right?
Whatever you prefer.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah, okay.
Is everybody good with suspension on it?
I am.
Okay. Everybody good? Because what I don't want, if there's any questions, we needed to wait. I think this is a positive for the village. I think it's kind of a long time coming. I
I'm going
want
to
to
say,
keep
this
it.
is, Mr. Mayor, a long time in the process.
Right.
It's been over a year.
Oh, it's been longer
Just
than
with
that.
Obie,
This
just
is
with Obie.
since the prior mayor, actually. This has
Yeah.
been going on because I've been speaking to Mr. Branch for almost 3 years, quite honestly. It's taken them quite some time to,
Yeah,
Get
last year,
going.
everything was put on hold with them, so it was.
yes, we put it on hold
Yeah,
for them.
they put it on
because
hold
they were-
last year, that's right.
Okay. All right, and if any questions, Sarah, from any residents? Okay. How many people do we have on right now?
We're up to 13.
13? Okay, good. Okay, we got item 5. I put that on there. I know there was a couple things we talked about. You do have a letter from Joe, just to kind of let me find here. Get all my stuff here. I separate that ordinance here. This goes with this. There's my letter from Mr. Joe here. No, I have it all right here. Just have to find it there, it's there. So I talked to Joe. We're going to have some, I know I mentioned I would talk to the 2 mayors. I am waiting for a response, but I talked to Joe in case I didn't get it. Me and him will probably meet with them and their engineer. We thought that might be, Joe's going to put a little thing together. So he put this letter together. He's on vacation with his family, so I asked him, I said, Joe, just put a memo together. We could, if council's comfortable, we could make a motion to allow him to put a bid together or something together to go out. Or we don't need a motion. I mean, it's nice to make one. And that would still be based on approvals. And what we would do, depending on what happens, whether we leave Sagamore in it or we do it separate, moving forward. And me and him did talk about, because we want to do it this year. Let's put it that way. So what would we do if we did it ourselves? And Joe said what we would do, as in the letter, what we've done in the past. If we can get everything together, that'd be great, but I think it's going to be the best interest that we move forward one way or the other. So I just kind of wanted to mention that. So if we wanted to make a motion in the council meeting for that, we can.
To go out for bids?
And John, I just made a motion to,
I was just writing it out, maybe a motion authorizing the village engineer to prepare plans and specifications
for crack sealing and
for
striping.
road, we want to call it, whatever, routine maintenance. I don't know, whatever the term of your program is it?
I think crack sealing
Okay.
and striping, because that's basically what it is. Or we could say road
I
repair,
think
crack.
it was originally road maintenance program.
Okay, you want to do road maintenance?
That kind of encompasses,
Right.
Road maintenance and striping, how's
yeah,
that?
that encompasses.
The road maintenance would cover the
The
crack
chipping
sealing and any
crack
repairs, and then
sealing,
the striping would be separate. With that said, I want to, Councilwoman Allen, we had a conversation yesterday and asked me to talk to Rob about maybe purchasing, or what would it take for maybe the service department to do some striping, to maybe offset the cost, and get some ideas. So today I mentioned to him in our staff meeting this afternoon, and he's going to look into that. As always, very receptive. And some of it might be to whether they rent or they think, maybe not so much the roads, but maybe some of the parking lot striping. Something that his staff could handle and still get all the other stuff done. So I just want to throw that out there. That was mentioned, And so we might see a little